The portal has just been open for a couple days, but the first initial wave of players entering the portal is already occurring. We'll talk about two possible players that could be on the Louisville men's basketball team next season. That's Skyy Clark and Sean Conway. So with that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinals Sports Zone. I also do some PA announcing work for the university and various sports. I want to take this time to say thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Look, I know the portal's just been open for a couple days, but the first initial wave of players has already occurred. And we'll talk about two of those players. Skyy Clark, the Illinois guard, has entered the portal. A lot of people have, long believed that Clark could be a possible player on Louisville's team next year. And then, as far as we know, the first player that Louisville has officially, like I said, as far as we know, have officially reached out to is Virginia Military Institute guard Sean Conway. And then we'll conclude the show by talking about the Louisville football program offering another top 200 player in four-star tight end wide receiver prospect Amir Jackson. So beginning with the portal, obviously, the portal is just a couple days open, or has been only open for a couple days, officially for non-grad transfers to enter into. So that initial wave of players has already come, right? 3 players from Louisville have entered the portal. But, you're going to see the Cardinals reach out to a lot of people, or a good amount of players, I would imagine. 2 players to focus on today on this episode is Skyy Clark and Sean Conway. Skyy Clark just entered the portal on Sunday, officially. But it's long been rumored. He stepped away from the team, midway through the season, played about 13 games for the Fighting Illini before stepping away from the team due to personal reasons. It's long been thought that Skyy Clark had played his last minutes in an Illinois uniform. So a lot of people figured that he was going to essentially go to the transfer portal and be elsewhere next year. Louisville has been a spot that a lot of people have circled as a possible destination. I mean, they were in his top 6 that he released after decommitting from Kentucky last year. Ended up going to Illinois. It seemed like it was a battle between Louisville and Illinois for Skyy Clark, and ultimately, Illinois got the final say, got the final nod, and got the commitment. So ultimately, it makes a lot of sense that Louisville is rumored in this recruitment. Once he entered the portal officially, a lot of people are quote tweeting the announcement tweet saying Louisville. Infamous eye emojis tweet, so on and so forth. So this would make a lot of sense for Louisville, would make a lot of sense for Skyy Clark as well. I would assume that the Cardinals will officially reach out here in the near term. But this is a possibility that would make sense for both sides. For Louisville's standpoint, I don't see why anyone would think elsewise, because I think that Skyy Clark is a phenomenal basketball player. He's very talented. I think that hopefully, whatever caused him to step away from the program a couple months ago, hopefully those situations are better. Hopefully he's in a better spot. I don't necessarily know what the reasoning behind the departure was. I'm not going to speculate because it's none of my business. All I know is that he stepped away. So I hope that whatever he was dealing with is something that has been resolved or has gotten better, whatever it may be. But ultimately, I understand the concern that people will say, well, he hasn't been at a certain spot for long. He played at multiple high schools, before college, and now is transferring after half a season at Illinois. How much can you trust Skyy Clark? I get that. I think multiple players have done that over, the course of college basketball's history, especially over the past 10 years or so. So I think that, it's not necessarily maybe ideal, but then again, you just really never know, situations and things of that nature. So I'm not going to sit here and speculate. All I'm going to say is that Skyy Clark is a phenomenal, talented basketball player that directly fills a need of what Louisville is looking for. They need guard play. They need players that not only can handle the basketball, but create for others. You look at what Skyy Clark did for Illinois. He started 12 of the 13 games he appeared in, played 24 and a half minutes per contest, averaged 7 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a half of a block per contest. Shot 41% from the field, 33% from the three-point arc, and 70% from the free throw line. Not the greatest shooting from behind the arc. 3-point percentage wasn't necessarily the greatest on 3.5 attempts, and field goal percentage can certainly get better as well. But the 6'3" guard, from the Los Angeles, California area is a very, very talented scorer. We've seen it. We saw, his high school film. He's a very gifted scorer, can create his own offense. And I think that's something that makes the most sense here for Louisville is you're looking for more players like El Ellis. And what I mean by that is you're looking for more players that can not only create offense for others, but also create their own shot. I think many times this season for Louisville, one of the issues is you're passing the ball around and there's not a lot of creation ability on the court. You have a plethora of wings on the court that aren't the greatest at creating their own offense off the dribble, creating their own shot off the dribble. Skyy Clark effortlessly creates his own shot, can score in all 3 levels of the half-court offense. Extremely crafty dribbling the basketball, does a solid job of finding his teammates. I know his 2 assists per game doesn't really pop off the page. I do think that he has, secondary creator, secondary offense initiator abilities. I think, the secondary playmaker on the court. I think that that's probably the role that Skyy Clark plays. You can never have too many ball handlers on the court. Is he a true point guard? I think he has the vision and the passing tendencies to ultimately get to that level. I think he's more of a hybrid. He's a combo guard. He's a hybrid too. Playing as a 1 at times. He does a good job of handling the basketball, creating that separation that Louisville so desperately needs in the future. Whether El Ellis comes back or not, I think that this is a no-brainer. Skyy Clark would be a player that starts for Louisville next season. People will say, oh, well, Kamari Lands had 6 points per game. Skyy Clark only averaged 7. I understand that, but I also think that, there was more scoring at Illinois, more of a scoring balance. I think that Skyy Clark really was extremely solid when, he got the opportunities and only played in 13 games. So he looks solid as a true freshman. Will have to continue to improve on the defensive end. But, being 6'3", 200 pounds, does a good job of getting to the basket, utilizing his size and finishing through contact. But what excites me the most about Skyy Clark's game is just that creation ability, the ability to essentially stop on a dime and create his own shot, shooting off the dribble, dribbling into his own shot. That's something that I look at and think, well, that's what Louisville needs is a guy that when you need a basket from a guy not named El Ellis, who are you getting it from? And if, Skyy Clark is able to be paired with El Ellis, or if Skyy Clark is a starter and El Ellis goes to the professional ranks, I think that that's a very, very solid addition. That'll be a very solid addition. For Skyy Clark's case, you're going to a Power 5 program. Obviously there's a solid relationship with Kenny Payne, with the Cardinals being in the top 6, rumored to be in the top 2. So you have that relationship. You're going to a Power 5 school, historical top 5 to 7 program in college basketball, blue blood program that has a ton of scoring opportunities right away, a ton of minutes, starting spot for you to jump right into. and a ton of spots to address the needs in the transfer portal. So would make a lot of sense for Louisville, would make a lot of sense here for Skyy Clark. I guess I understand the concerns about, him, having a lot of stops along the way, a lot of high schools played at, a lot of, and now, multiple colleges. But I mean, look, Louisville is in need of a guard that can create his own offense and show that he can create offense for others and be a lead guard. And I think that that's Skyy Clark. I think he fits what Louisville is looking for. And hopefully, like I said, from, the non-basketball side of things, I hope that whatever Skyy Clark was dealing with, it's been handled, addressed, and hopefully he's in a better situation. So, but Louisville has reached out to another guard. That is Sean Conway from VMI. We'll talk about him here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at Built Bar. The March Madness Built Bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now is your time to make it count and go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for the cookies and cream bar. And if you want, whatever bar to win, then you'll have to go and vote for that bar. Support your team and support your bar or puff. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entering into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built, and one lucky Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly and straight to your door. You have to try it. It's the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're amazing. And you won't think that they're good for you, but they are. Run to builtmarchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. Hey, Cardinal fans, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Grab your bracket and go listen to the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown. With the national analysis and the insights from our local experts, the Locked On College Basketball Breakdown, our bracket breakdown, has everything you need to make the most informed decisions on your bracket. Find the episode on Locked On College Basketball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Heading into the second segment, we just talked about Skyy Clark. Now we're talking about Sean Conway, the veteran guard from VMI. He has been reached out to by Louisville and a plethora of other schools. Obviously, might not be the first one, but officially is the first player that I've seen on social media and through the media that Louisville has reached out to. Now, that's not to say that he was the first one, just the first one that we've seen. Sean Conway has played 4 seasons at VMI, which stands for the Virginia Military Institute. Played 4 seasons, did not start a game his first year, but after that has started all but one. So 25 games started as a sophomore, 32 as a junior, and 28 as a senior. So 29.8 minutes per game this past season, averaged 12.1 points per game, 5 rebounds, 1.4 assists, pretty solid shooting splits, 42% from the field, 38% from behind the arc, 87% from the charity stripe, 1.9 win share, which is pretty solid. The 6'5" native of Fairfield, Connecticut, has had a ton of interest early on since entering the portal. But one thing that I've seen from Louisville fans that is pretty valid is that the Cardinals at this point in time seem to be the one of the only Power 5 programs to reach out. I'm looking at the schools that have reached out so far. Iowa State has reached out, but here's the list of some other schools. Now, obviously, this is subject to change, but here's the other schools. Rhode Island, Loyola Chicago, Richmond, Longwood, Albany, Sacramento State, Indiana State, Jacksonville, and Chattanooga. So as of right now, it seems like Louisville's only one of the only Power 5 schools to reach out. Granted, a lot of Power 5 schools are playing in the NCAA tournament or going to play in the NCAA. Maybe a little bit of an overreaction on my part, on some of the Louisville fans' part. But if we get to a point here a month from now and Conway still hasn't decided where he's going to go and the offer sheet still hasn't improved, then we might look at it and say, well, he looked solid at the mid-major position, but is he Louisville level? And I understand the rebuttal that, well, he's better than what we had. Or beggars can't be choosers. Louisville is looking for a complete roster turnover. You're not going to get 5 All-Americans to come join the team. You have to go get, experienced, polished guys at either the Power 5 or the mid-major level. Look, I get that. And I understand that Louisville might not necessarily be in a position where they can turn down players like Sean Conway. But at this point, I guess it's just me. I think that Louisville is a program that should have, enough pull within college basketball from a historical standpoint, from a facility standpoint, a fan base standpoint, a clout standpoint, being a very solid program over the past 20 years, that you should be able to go out and get a ton of the prospects that are your first choice. Now, who's to say that Sean Conway's not Kenny Payne's first choice? I don't know that, but judging by the offer sheet right now, it might be too early to tell, but the Cardinals have spent no time wasted reaching out to Conway. I think Louisville needs to be selective with their scholarship offers, but I also think that you can't be too selective to where you're standing at the end of May and June and you miss out on a couple of your top priorities, and you miss out on guys in the portal because you thought that you were going to be able to get other guys. So I think, you have to look at things from all angles, but Conway does fill a need. He's a very solid three-point shooter, was a volume three-point shooter over the past 3 years, essentially averaged 5 threes per game, 40% as a sophomore, 31% as a junior, and 38% as a senior on 5.7 3-point attempts per contest. So you watch his film, he's a player that not only can do well in catch and shoot situations, but also can dribble into his shot. Doesn't need a ton of space to get into his shot. And I'm watching his film and thinking, man, Louisville needed a player like this, because the way the Cardinals played over the past 2 seasons, it's like a team that was a good 3-point shooting team. Louisville played like a team that was a good 3-point shooting team, or was trying to be a good 3-point shooting team, but just wasn't. I think that, you had some players that were able to hit that deep ball, but in terms of a consistent shooting threat, I'm not necessarily sure that Louisville had one last year. This past year, maybe Matt Cross was that the year before, but even then he wasn't necessarily the greatest shooter for the Cardinals in 2021-22. So I look at Conway as a guy that, Louisville could definitely use a player that at the mid-major level, looked pretty decent throughout his college career, started a ton of games for VMI, and also shot the ball extremely well. As a sophomore, was 14th in the conference at rebounding per game, 13th in defensive rebounding. So I think, being a guy that affects the game all throughout, being able to focus attentiveness to detail on the defensive side of things, I think that that's a very valuable thing to have. So you look at some of the biggest games for Conway this season. I will say that when conference play came around, not really all that great. Granted, he was pretty solid here throughout, but in his last, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last 8 games, ever scored double figures in 2 games. Now, granted, a non-conference, he was pretty solid. He had 20 points against Fairleigh Dickinson, 28 points against Navy, 23 against Radford, 17 against Fordham, 14 against Samford, 20 against Wofford, 18 against Mercer, so on and so forth. But I think that 17 against Richmond. So it's really hard to tell. I'm trying to look at when he's played solid competition, how he's fared, because I look at what he's done over his career. And let's be completely honest. VMI really hasn't had all that tough of an out-of-conference schedule as it pertains to the Power 5. So I really don't necessarily know how to really judge that. He played Penn State and had 7 points as a sophomore, 0 points against Virginia Tech as a sophomore. So I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit too unfair, but I think it's a very, very fair point to talk about is that how's he going to fare against Power Five competition? So I think that this is a recruitment that I'd like to see where it goes. I think Louisville will probably maybe work to get him on a visit, but I want to see how his offer sheet progresses over the next couple weeks. See who reaches out. Louisville and Iowa State, the only two Power Five schools, to my knowledge, that have reached out to Sean Conway, but still significant nonetheless. But nonetheless, we are going to conclude the show talking about football recruiting. We'll talk about Amir Jackson, a new player that was offered here in just a second as we talk about our friends over at FanDuel. We're over the midway point of the NBA season. And now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. For me, I like all the NBA opportunities. There's a ton of exclusive bets, like how many three-pointers can be hit in the first 3 minutes, for example. I like to see what the projections are for really solid statistical players. Well, I mean, I guess they're solid players nonetheless. I mean, Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo are two of the best players in the league. So I like to see where their projections are at and if they can reach them. Points, rebounds, assists, players that consistently flirt with triple doubles. So nonetheless, I think it's very solid opportunities. So do yourself a favor. Don't miss the chance. Go get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, heading on into the final segment of the show, we're taking a little bit of a step in a different direction, going towards football now. Football recruiting, a new 2024 prospect has been offered. That is four-star prospect Amir Jackson of Portal, Georgia. 6'5", 218-pound, listed as an athlete, but plays tight end and wide receiver at Portal. Is projected as a tight end / wide receiver. Also plays on the defensive side of things, but is a multiple sport athlete where he is a 4-year letterman of the basketball team, averaging in double figures since his freshman year of high school. So a very athletic prospect that utilizes his size as a receiver. Ranked as the 199th best prospect in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. 19th best athlete, 29th best prospect in the state of Georgia. Has seen his recruitment really start to take off over the past couple of months. Looking at the months of January and February, a ton of big-time offers. January got offers from Kentucky, Florida, Virginia Tech, and then in February was a big month. Florida State, Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn, Miami, so on and so forth. He will be on campus at Georgia on April 1st, which, as we mentioned when talking about players from the state of Georgia, it's going to be tough to take players from the state of Georgia out of Georgia if the University of Georgia and Kirby Smart want them to attend the Bulldogs University. So one thing to look at. But Amir Jackson, fits what Louisville is looking for at tight end. Obviously, Jamari Johnson, Kylan Fox fits that, that need as well. The very athletic, solid wide receiver like tight end that can play whether out wide or in the middle. Dylan Hipp, who we talked about that just visited the program, he fits that mold as well. Very versatile tight ends. I feel like that's the way the tight end position has gone. We've gone more so from a traditional run block first and then become a tertiary option or whatever in the passing scheme. But now it's receiver first and blocking second, to where we're going to utilize a ton of athleticism, size, and speed, whether it be out wide, whether it be in the slot as a traditional, hand in the ground tight end. Whatever it may be, I think that Amir Jackson, kind of reflects that trend. He's very, very athletic, does a good job of high pointing the football. On top of that, being 6'5", just extremely solid 50-50 jump balls, but has that deceptive speed. I thought it was very interesting because Portal utilized him in ways of, like wide receiver screens, immediately getting the ball at the line of scrimmage and using that deceptive speed, using that overall strength to break through tackles and, move the sticks. So I think that this is a recruitment that I like that Braum and company are handing out these offers to top prospects. It's going to be tough to take him out of the state of Georgia for sure. I think that Georgia is going to be the team to beat, especially with the Bulldogs offering and then him scheduling a visit less than 2 months later. So something to focus on here if you are Louisville, just trying to get him on campus for a visit, but continually furthers my point of I think that the Cardinals are really trying to create, a pipeline into Georgia as much as they are Florida, Texas, even the local area. So Georgia is an area that we need to focus on for not only 2024 recruiting, but recruiting moving forward. But Amir Jackson, even though, he plays on the defensive side of the ball as well, plays sort of as like a linebacker safety hybrid. I think that obviously people project him to be a tight end at the next level. Very, very versatile, athletic, solid size, being 6'5", is going to be tough to take down in jump ball situations. A player that I would love to see Louisville get seriously involved with. The main thing is just getting him on a visit as soon as possible. So that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you right back here very soon.